Good morning, Rabbi Sai. Kesubos Daf Chavav, the 8-minute daf. Today, we're going to learn a new concept called Harana, and also we're going to be discussing, among other things, whether one aide who testifies today can be started with another aide who testifies tomorrow, and many other things. The Gemara tells us a story about Mesiach Lefitumai. What does it mean that a person was just saying over a story, and from that story we can learn halacha? There was a person who remembered when he was a child, his father took him out of school, put him on his shoulders, brought him to the mikveh, put him in the mikveh, because he was tamei, because he most likely played with a heap of trash and there was a sheretz in there. And they waited till the Erev Shemesh, until the sun came down, because if you go to the mikveh, you're still somewhat tamei until sunset. And then they gave him to eat from truma. His friends in school, they distanced themselves from him, not to be metama the food. And they would call him, they nicknamed him, Yochanan Oichel Chalois. Yochanan, the one who eats challah. Challah is a type of a truma. And based on that story, since he didn't come to say the story to get a psak that he's a kain, he was just saying over a story. Based on that story, they Rebbe paskin that we could promote him to kahuna, that he could eat truma d'Rabbanan. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, if you see somebody eating ma'aser rishon, that's also a good sign that he's a kain. Now we know that ma'aser rishon is really for Leviim, not for Kohanim. The Gemara explains to us, we're talking about a situation where there was a rumor that this individual is a chalal. In other words, his father was a kain, married, let's say, a divorcee or a chalutza, and therefore he's a chalal, he has a halacha of a Yisrael. So certainly they didn't give him ma'aser rishon based on the fact that he's a Levi. He's not a Levi, he's the son of a kain. But if we don't have a chazaka that his father is a kain, there's no chazaka here, even according to Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. Why? Because Ezra, he gave a penalty, he gave a knas to the Leviim. Since they didn't come up to Eretz Yisrael with him, when he brought Klal Yisrael with him, he said, you no longer get ma'aser rishon. From now on, we're giving it to the Kohanim. Only the Kohanim. Now, there's a problem though, because if we're in a place, let's say, where there's no Kohanim, then people would give the ma'aser rishon to the Levi. So just from the fact that you see somebody eating or receiving ma'aser rishon doesn't mean that he's a kain, because perhaps he's a Levi and somebody gave him the ma'aser rishon when he wasn't supposed to, or that there was no kain there. If you see somebody who's dividing up his father's inheritance, and one brother gets this and the other brother gets that, and another brother gets truma, you can't prove from the fact that he got truma, even though it's in Bezdin, that he's a kain. Because once again, Bezdin will divvy up the nechasim based on their value. And sometimes you have to give one of the sons truma, even though they're not certain that he's a kain, maybe he'll go and sell it. That's also a possibility. It doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to eat it. The Gemara tells us that according to everybody, in order to do an irur, in order to make a commotion, so to speak, about this kahuna, to uproot it, to contradict what we're saying that this person is a kain, you need at least two people. The Gemara tells us an interesting story, or a case. If there was an irur, there was a koil, let's say, there was a rumor, as you see in the chart. To begin with, you have, in step one, you have a kid who has a chazaka that he's a kain. But then a rumor came out that he's the son of a grusha, he's a chal. So we brought him down, we demoted him. But then an eid echad came along and said he is a kain. So we promoted him again. And then we took him down again. It's up, down, up, down. So we took him down based on the testimony of two eidim. So that is the machlokes, says the Gemara in our Mishnah. Because if we promote him once again at the end, when Shimon comes along as an eid echad, first of all, there might be a problem or a machlokes, whether or not This is elusive to the Bezdin. Does the Bezdin look bad when they keep on taking this guy and bringing him down and then put him back up? Maybe we shouldn't put him back up. Or there's a machlokes whether or not the two Eidim, Reuven and Shimon on top, are mitzdaref to be two. Together with the chazaka, they'll beat the Eidim below. And there's another machlokes not so tied into our sugya, but it's here in our sugya. Do the Eidim need to see the testimony together, or perhaps not? In other words, for instance, what if one Eid says, I saw with my own eyes that Reuven borrowed money from Shimon? The second Eid comes along and says, I didn't see the halva, I didn't see Shimon borrowing from Reuven, but I know from Shimon's mouth, I heard him admit to it. So you see, you have a case where there's a halva and hoida. Can we combine those two Eidim? Brand new Mishnah. When Klal Yisrael's ruling and a woman is nechbash, they put her in jail, let's say, for monetary reasons, she didn't pay taxes or something. So she doesn't lose her kashrus to her husband. We're not concerned that she was violated in jail, because the non-Jew is worried that if he violates the woman, he might lose the money. However, if the non-Jews are ruling, so we learned this idea of hirana. It's a terrible idea. It's a concept where one would give his wife as collateral for a loan, and when the time comes to pay up and he didn't pay, she becomes the lender's wife. That's very severe. Now we have to be chayshish that she was violated. And the only way out of it is if she has Eidim testifying that she wasn't violated. And Rav would say the same thing would apply to nechbisha, which is a lesser madrega. It's not as severe. Over there, perhaps, when the guy puts her in jail, maybe he doesn't have the right, he's more fearful. There are some that wanted to be doichek and say that this halacha only applies b'hirana. However, if she was put in jail, nechbash, for nefashos, for capital punishment, then she's usher to her husband because we're concerned that maybe she was nisratza, she willingly went with the non-Jew, and that would make her usher to her husband. Have a wonderful day.